Hello, I'm State Senator Susan Moran. I proudly represent the towns of Bourne, Falmouth, Kingston, Pembroke, Plymouth, and Sandwich. Welcome to the first episode of In Your Corner. This show will highlight what we're doing in the legislature and how that work connects back to the needs of our community. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the plan to build a convention center that will serve all of Southeast Massachusetts and the Plymouth leaders behind it. Stay with me as we get right into today's discussion here on In Your Corner. And I'm proud to tell you that we're going to be joined today by State Representative Mathew Muratore and Lea Filson, president of the local organization See Plymouth. Matt and Lea have both been essential to developing the plan for the convention center, and I'm so excited to have them on today. We actually have Matt right here. Thank you for being on today, Matt.
I'm very honored to be here on your first show. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
It'll be momentous.
Yes, it will be.
To get right to it, you and I worked together to get money to do a feasibility study for this project that will decide whether or not a convention center can work for Southeast Massachusetts. What do you expect the feasibility study to show?
Well, I'm hoping what it's going to show is that there's a void in this area. When you look at, I call it the square, when you look at Providence, Worcester, Boston, and then you look in between all that and down, there's really nothing for a mid-sized convention center around. You go to Boston, you go to Worcester, you go to Providence, but nothing really in this area. And when I say mid-size, something like 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 seats is what I envision, maybe with some shops, etc. Now, personally, since I represent Plymouth, I would love to see it in Plymouth. But the idea of the funding and thank you, by the way, for co-sponsoring that with me, the idea of that funding was to actually have a look at, for the Cape Cod, South Coast, South Shore area. And when you look at those three areas, Plymouth is right in the middle of that.
That's so true. And not only is Plymouth geographically right in the middle, but Plymouth has a special place in history tourism, in education tourism. It's got a special place in what we like to call sea tourism in terms of, having dredged the harbor. And it just seems to be a perfect magnet for not only large conventions that will draw hotel rooms, but also that, we can have a place to highlight our small businesses. And, what do you see at this point how that would particularly fit as we're coming out of COVID?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It would be such an economic boom for this area. As you know, tourism was devastated during COVID, and tourism is our number one industry here. And but what we've seen over this past summer and this past spring is numbers really have been increased for tourism. We've seen folks from every single state in the country. International tourism is still not happening yet. That's still 2 or 3 years down the road. But I think the Plymouth 400 and the pent-up demand for people coming in 2020, and then that didn't happen. I think that's why we're seeing the numbers now. I think that's why we're seeing people now coming. So I think, would people that have businesses around the country want to have, a convention, a seminar, workshops in Plymouth? Absolutely. You got 33 miles of coastline, beaches. You've got shops, some of the best restaurants, downtown shopping. I mean, it is the place to come to.
You're so right, and there are so not only small businesses in terms of, shops but there are all restaurants. Just a tremendous amount of folks that come and stay, and then also feed our other industries like hospitals and otherwise. And I think we've talked a little bit about my background being in tourism and having actually run a 9-room B&B,
right,
and looking at how that can be the spark that lights up a main street. And when you have a lit up town center, the way Plymouth is has been and continues to really up its game on, that in itself is an attraction, and you get that popularity feeling, and from there, as you say, the centric aspect can then feed the Cape Cod tourism economy, the Hull economy. We were this morning with Rep. Joe Machino, who was talking about trying to do some more liaison work with Hull. We were lucky enough, you and I were on the Tourism and Arts Committee, for the Joint Committee in the legislature.
Culture, yeah.
Exactly, and we, to have the chair, Rep. Carol Fiola there. That's, Lea Filson did a great job attracting that much attention to not only Plymouth, but with things to come. And so, what do you see for next steps?
Well, what I see for next steps, and with this this $150,000 that we were able to secure, and See Plymouth is going to take the lead on this, to do that study. I mean, I was talking to Lee about that recently. She's got a committed group of people that are going to be working together on this. They're going to have to get a company in to help them with the study, put together a study.
Steve Cohn is involved?
Steve Cole from the Economic Foundation will be part of it. Amy Naples from the Chamber will be a part of it. There's some other folks that are going to be part of it as well. Some of the business community will be part of it as well. But the idea is to look at somewhere in Plymouth County. Again, I'm more biased to Plymouth. I think you're right. I think with everything we have to offer here, I think that would be the right place.
I agree.
So I think what will happen is I think they'll very quickly come to a decision of where it should be, but then more importantly, how much it's going to cost, and then what can we do to attract public-private partnerships to actually make this happen.
And so the logistics are going to take a while, and I think about the conversation. A piece of this initiative, I think, will help you and I and the community move forward on other aspects, just as we were talking about earlier with the program today on tourism and the economy. When you look at the housing impetus that needs to take place so that we do have places nearby work for our workers to live. We've got a workforce shortage right now. I know Rep. Muratore was at a forum very recently that you and I were, I believe, both there at Town Hall. And when you look at how the foundation of the economy being tourism, and in order for that to kick off what I like to call OPM, other people's money from all over the country to come into Plymouth, you do need that infrastructure. You've got to have homes for people that work nearby. You've got to have the jobs that sustain families at that living wage. And so how do you see in particular what a convention center will kick off to those other economic foundational issues?
Yeah, I think it will spur on some of those issues. And as you know, we've put some money in the ARPA funding at the House. I know the Senate's going to be working on that soon. $200 million more to put in for housing and initiatives like that to help towns like Plymouth to get some more housing in place, whether it's workforce housing or affordable housing or whatever. But I think having a convention center or the idea of it coming helps bring some more of that in play, some more developers in play to help with housing. And we also need to talk about transportation as well, because transportation is another leg of that stool as well. And yes, we have GATRA here, but there are holes in that transportation that for these workers, that if we're going to bring them here to live, we got to get them to be able to get around too. So our next step of ARPA funding will be looking at transportation on the House side, so hopefully we're going to see money there as well. So I see this COVID and this ARPA funding, this one-time spending that we're going to be doing from the House and Senate side, is going to help spur on what we need to do here in Plymouth.
It's huge, and I'm glad you brought in transportation, because part of the growth of a community is that je ne sais quoi, that whole if you build it, they will come.
I'm glad you explained what that meant, because I didn't know what that meant.
I don't know.
I didn't take French. Is that French? I don't know.
But that thing that brings that vibrance of youth, along with that professional sort of technology level jobs, along with the tourism economy, so that everyone who lives here and enjoys Main Street and every bit of the historic aspects, along with the beautiful ecology, the beaches, everything that Plymouth has to offer in the area, can in and of itself bring more people that will, bottom line, be part of the tax base.
Exactly.
So that you don't end up spending so much money that to live here that you're priced out yourself. So there is a real, there's a real importance to attracting housing. We need housing for our first responders. We need housing for our teachers. We need housing for our storekeepers. And everyone I know just loves being able to walk down Main Street and festivals, celebrations. That's something that you just can't put a value on it, but it's a real attraction.
It's a real attraction. It brings a community alive. It attracts people from all over to come, which is why we're seeing some people from all over. But I think if we can get more people to live here as well, and Plymouth is, as you know, it's the largest square miles in the Commonwealth, 103 square miles, and so there is room to build some more housing. And I think if we could attract those type of people to work with some good paying jobs, using the economy, using tourism to attract other business, other industries to come here for good paying jobs for people, I think that's just only icing on the cake.
I agree. And we actually, with the ARPA funding, in the next round that will come up, you and I have really been looking at infrastructure items. We've been looking at clean water issues to support building in the right places, in the right kind of building that's really it's synonymous with the character of Plymouth. And when we say affordable housing, that's what we're talking about.
Exactly right.
We're talking about housing for everyone that's going to be that rock for the economy.
Yeah.
Sorry for the pun.
No, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we both have older children too, and my two older daughters, it took them a lot to try to get a house, to try to live here, and it's they have to have a partner with them to kind of help with that, and then they're paying exorbitant prices for houses. So we've got to be able to help with that workforce housing as well.
And how about childcare?
And
I have
childcare,
an
absolutely.
important childcare bill. I know you and I have been talking about that as well, which I appreciate it. Right now, young families are paying as much as for childcare as they could otherwise be putting into housing.
Yeah.
And that's a real, it's a real hardship for our next generation, because our generation, kind of part of our well-being and success was just to have that home ownership, have that, or apartment that you can afford, because that's allows you to sleep at night and have energy to put into the community.
Yeah, and I've heard you say this before, that sometimes you're paying, it's like paying a rent or paying a mortgage. You're absolutely right. I own, as you know, 3 child daycare centers, and it's a little over $400 a week for an infant. So you add that up, that's almost $1,900 a month just for one child. And if people have 2 children or 3 children, I don't know how they do it. So we have to be able to help people out. There's 14,000 kids on a waiting list in Massachusetts right now for childcare, and we've got to figure out a way to do it. We don't have enough childcare centers either.
Guess
so
what?
We've got to figure out how to do that.
Those families aren't going back to
They're
work
not going
full
back to
time.
work, right?
Because it's a Hobson's choice.
Exactly, right. So you need childcare, you need transportation, you need housing, and that's going to spur on the economy and get people back to work.
Well, with the ARPA funding, I think we have some good news coming, and
I
I
agree.
want to just really thank you for being here for
Thank
the
you.
first show.
Yeah.
Pretty momentous.
Yeah, very honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm Senator Moran, and I'm in your corner. I want to, just for the next piece, let you know that I did also have the opportunity to speak with Lea Filson, who's the Executive Director and CEO of See Plymouth, the Destination Marketing Organization and Regional Tourism Council for Plymouth and Plymouth County. And we're going to take a look at that interview next. Hello, everyone. State Senator Susan Moran here for the Plymouth-Barnstable District, which includes on the Cape side, Falmouth, Sandwich, and Bourne, and on the Plymouth side, Plymouth, Kingston, and Pembroke. And I couldn't be more pleased to have Lea Filson here, who is the, kind of personifies the image and the history of Plymouth, and just it is the most incredible marketer, which is the foundation of the bulk of our economy in the region. And we wanted to have a conversation about legislation that Rep. Matt Muratore and I filed with respect to a convention center in the region. So Lee, can you start by, if it's possible, in a couple of minutes, giving everyone an idea of everything that you actually do? And you're going to have to summarize, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to fit it in this program.
Well, that's pretty easy. I've got the most incredible team on earth. Together, we promote and market the entire county of Plymouth, as well as the town of Plymouth, to bring visitors to our destination. And I don't have to tell all of you, we have like the best destination ever. We can equal anything anybody else has, and then add to that the history of the fact that one of the most important American foundational stories happened here. This is where the Mayflower landed. So we use digital, print, broadcast advertising. We advertise in a number of ways through social media. We constantly do metrics, and we constantly do studies and surveys to make sure that we're targeting the appropriate places. And all that with the fact that we still have to balance it. You don't want to have so much tourism that it's just overwhelming your infrastructure. And so that's where you, Senator Moran, and Representative Merritori come in. We are so proud that the two of you gave us $150,000 in the past budget. You earmarked it in the past budget in order to do a study for a mid-sized convention center for the South Shore. It will serve all the way to the Cape, all the way to South Boston. It won't be a big, huge structure, but it will be big enough to handle groups, and it's going to help us in a number of ways.
You know, one thing that I particularly caught as something that we don't always think of at the beginning, and I'm so pleased that you do. When we have a region that's dependent on tourism economy, there's sort of two sides of it, right? On the one hand, we get as residents, not only a tax benefit and a business and economic development benefit from having our tourists here, because I like to say we're using OPM, other people's money, to be an influx into the region. But on the other hand, as residents, we really have the benefit of right where we are living to have the most important experiences, not only for ourselves, but for our children. And that educational base is just so important moving forward. So the fact that you are looking at it so in such a balanced way, so that our residents really can experience firsthand those benefits, and that I'm sure includes, you know, kind of balancing just elements like travel and you know, regionally getting around. So talk a little bit about that, a little bit more, if you would.
I will. And first of all, thanks again. That $150,000 will help us to begin a feasibility study, which will then tell us the best way, the best place, and answer all of our questions before we actually go after state and federal money to build the structure. And we're hoping that the town will be involved in that as well. But as everybody knows that knows me, one of the things I say over and over and over is that locals are tourists too. And they truly are. And the beauty of living in an area that is supported so heavily by tourism is that we get to enjoy all the benefits. Because of tourism, we have got an incredible infrastructure in the town of Plymouth, for instance. Our bay is no longer covered and lined with factories and pollution. We now have got a beautiful, beautiful area that we can tell this American story and bring visitors during season to see that. And the beauty of the convention center is that's going to help us spread that out. Right now, we are crushed on weekends. We need to spread that out. And the way to do that with a convention center is to create a place during the week for mid-level meetings, helping to fill the hotels during the week, helping to supply more and more jobs to people besides just part-time jobs. There are a million reasons. It's going to help retail and shopping and dining. And there are so many ways in order to spread that out. But the beauty of it is because it is seasonal, we can certainly come down and join all the visitors and go on a whale watch or a pirate cruise or go to Plymouth Patuxent museums. There are many, many ways that we can enjoy it with visitors. But during the period that visitors are not coming in, then we've got wide open space and can enjoy all of those benefits equally as much.
Another thing that caught my ear, so to speak here, when you look at having a tourism economy, and it tends sometimes to be seasonally related in terms of the numbers of folks coming in and the challenges that sometimes that brings. So the highlight that you just pointed out is when we not only stretch out the season, but we bring more variety of businesses to Plymouth and Plymouth County. And the fact that when you're not so reliant on a certain sector, you not only bring other job opportunities for our kids, whether it's tech or could be related to the funding that's coming in for climate change and many other variety of businesses and entrepreneurship. So this tourism economy can be balanced more with this convention center.
And it should be. As my good friend Stephen Cole, who runs the Economic Development Foundation, will say, is you do need a fair balance. No town or county should be run entirely on one industry. It takes many. But the beauty of tourism and the beauty of the fact that we've got such a heavy influence of it here is that for all of those companies that come in for those midweek conventions and look around, suddenly they think, wow, you know, my company might be really good here, and look at all the assets. We've got restaurants, we've got incredible schools, we've got one of the best school systems anywhere. We have so much to offer, and that tourism infrastructure that has been built really helps to attract all those businesses to even things out. The other thing I was going to mention too is Plymouth Patuxent Museums does an incredible job with groups. We don't have enough stuff in town in order to help accommodate groups. We need a little bit more space to do meetings and that sort of thing. And so a mid-level convention center will really help in that arena as well.
You mentioned schools, and I can think of internships. When you look at folks who are coming to the convention center, they may come as individuals and say, wow, there are things that I'd like to bring my family to see in the future. Talk about, if you would, the COVID effect that the region has experienced, and sort of positives and negatives. I know the Chamber of Commerce has really been expert in helping businesses adapt, and what do you see in terms of silver linings or things that we've learned that we might be able to connect going forward?
Well, there's certainly no doubt that COVID was devastating, because the one industry that was hurt the most by the pandemic is travel and tourism. We had to immediately become hyper-local and start drawing as many people as we could to our area in order to just keep the businesses running. And the Chamber, on their part, created all kinds of events that were outdoors that also helped to bring a lot of people to us. But I mean, really think about it. Think of all the shops that did all of this commemoration stuff to sell, Think of all of the events that were planned by our Plymouth 400 group that never happened. I mean, it literally ended up just being totally devastating, and the economic devastation was the biggest of all. Massachusetts itself also was hit the second hardest of any of the states in America. And so because of that, we had a lot of losses. But I think if I had to talk about a silver lining, it's that the federal and state governments, as we worked up toward 2020, really put millions of dollars into dredging our harbor. We redid all sorts of things downtown in order to make the infrastructure even more enticing and inviting than it had been before. Plymouth 400 did a pivot, and they did an incredible book that was sent to all of the schools in Massachusetts that talked about not just the Mayflower story, but Massachusetts history. That book is going to be used for years and years to come. So all of us in our own way had to figure out how to make the best of it. I am proud to say, though, that in Plymouth County, we lost fewer businesses than just about anybody, and everybody kind of piled on together and really worked really hard to try to help everyone survive through this whole mess of the last 2 years.
And I'm so proud that we did that as a community. And I'm proud to have sponsored a couple of pieces of legislation that we hope are coming for approval in joint committee right now out of ARPA that will go directly into tourism and also directly to help small businesses who have been affected. And that should be hopefully coming into practical use very, very soon. So Lee, we're about out of time. I can't thank you enough for coming and for giving people a peek into what the Regional Convention Center might look like and the benefits it is going to pump right back into the community. Thank you for all of your work, and look forward to the next time I'm in your corner, Senator Susan Moran. Thank you, Matt and Lee, for joining me for this episode. If you at home have questions or topics you'd like to see discussed, or if you just need to reach out to my Senate office, you can call 617-722-1330 or email me at susan.moran@masenate.gov. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you all for watching today. I'm Senator Moran, and I'll be in your corner.